Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Push the Point. I have got with me what I feel is probably one of the best Oldhims ever. Oh, controversy. No, Yorgos is a very seasoned and well adapted Oldhim player. He went to the Nationals 2021 and won, and recently went to ProQuest 3 with Oldhim pre-ban, obviously. Pre-ban, and won 2 of his ProQuests. So this dude knows how to play his Oldhim, and if you want to get an idea of that, you can go check out the Greece Nationals finals of 2021 and watch this guy play Oldhim, because I thought, and that's how we got to know each other, actually.
Yeah, that's actually how we got to know.
Yeah, because I saw that, I was like, whoa, what the fuck? This guy knows what he's doing. Like, he's so good. It's literally a crash course of how to play. So, as you all know, Oldhim has had a ban with a few key cards, maybe one major key card ban, which is Winter's Whale. So Yorgos has kindly said he's going to jump on, and you've been toying around with the deck without Winter's Whale, and I wanted to capture your thoughts on what you think the direction he could go going forward. Obviously, Outsiders is coming, but in the meantime.
Okay, so I think that the good thing about the banning list was actually that the other good decks or most competitive decks like Fi and Icelander also got hit a lot. So what my thoughts are about the bannings is that probably Oldhim it was definitely a nerf to Oldhim. There is no question that Titan Fist is way weaker.
Yeah,
but I think it actually was way more relevant into the more like the other decks, like Dorinthia's, Brutes. I mean, I don't think it's as impactful versus Fi and versus Icelander, because I kept saying that a lot when people asked me about Oldhim into the Fi matchup and into Icelander. You do not win by attacking with a weapon. You do not win Icelander by attacking with a weapon, and you do not win Fi most of the time by attacking with a weapon. You against Fi, which is probably you do attack with a weapon, but it's not as important. You want to get to the game to a state where your opponent is forced to block the hammer every single turn. The Titan's Fist is not a huge difference in that, because actually with the Guardian, the cost of having a card that costs 3 or more is not that great. I mean, it's pretty easy for a Guardian to just fill up his deck with every single blue card of your deck being a 3+, if that's the route you want to go. So it's not a huge thing in that aspect. Missing the Frostbite is definitely annoying, but again, it's not the end of the world, because during the earlier stages of the game and the mid game, you probably don't want to attack with a weapon against a Fi. Against some other decks like Dorinthia and such, probably yes, probably you will miss Winter's Whale a lot more, but Titan Fist is not as big of a deal as probably many people might think.
Yeah, I think it's down to the fact that it's a lot of people get used to it. Do you know what I mean? They get used to having what they have, and they think it can only work with it, when actually with a bit of adaptability and a little bit of mindset, you can actually, there's a lot of, like you're saying, a lot of things that Titan's Fist's biggest thing, pitching 3 and swinging for 4 when you're on the lower health part of your life. It's still that's the bit, isn't it? That's the bit. The it's not the fact that you're going to get a frostbite. You're going to die.
Yeah.
You know? And it still does it.
And that's why I think, and it's I think Fi and Oldhim again became one of those matchups that both people will think that they are ahead. So it's a pretty normal 60% matchup, you know.
Oh, yeah.
The Oldhim thinks he has 60%, the Fi player thinks he has 60%.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think probably the biggest change regarding Oldhim with the new bannings is probably that I think right now Blizzard is actually an amazing card. On my last deck, I only had one copy of Blizzard because Belittle can. I mean, if you had a Blizzard in hand and you needed to play it because that's the curve of your hand, and you actually had the pitch a blue, play Belittle, and fetch a second blue, it was amazingly bad. Right now, Belittle is no longer around, so Blizzard, you are happy to see as many copies of it as you can into the more aggressive matchups. I have a disclaimer though here that
Right.
most of the time with Guardian, it's really important to know how your opponent's deck look like. For instance, it's way easier to shape the deck in order to face off against an opponent where you know about 85 or 90% of their decks. And we don't know yet what Fi is going to do with the new sideboard slots he got. I'm telling that because Blizzard might not be so good because 5 players might just be like, okay, rather than the 3 belittles and the Minois, I'm going to add 3 blue cards. And right now I have 20 something blue cards, so I have a blue every turn. So
But they
Blizzard
get
is still
powered
bad.
down though. But they get powered down by their damage output by doing so. So I think I don't think it's an easier approach going forward because the flexibility of what Fire was able to offer of literally just here is a 1 cost 3 go again, which is exactly what I want most of my stuff to do. Plus, go find more resources that you cannot get done over. There's nothing in the game that can do that. Only Belittle can do this. So by just trying to jam in more blues, don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, that's why Blizzard might not be a 3 copies every single time against 5, but it's because if I had to play in a tournament the next week, I would probably add 3 Blizzards because I think that Fies wouldn't have the time, to figure out a new way of sideboarding against you. If they try to have the old approach just without belittles, Blizzard is amazing on that spot.
Yeah.
Because Blizzard Stalagmite is a hard stop on their turn. No matter, it's a hard stop. Blizzard Stalagmite is still amazing.
Okay, no. So let's go through some of the core cards of this deck. I don't know how much of the core cards have drastically changed.
Most of the cards haven't really changed. Probably the bigger change regarding the newer decks, it's something that most people went about, is that actually you added on the ice slot the Insidious Chills. It was a card I didn't run before.
Right. Okay.
But right now it checks a lot more things because it's actually 3 cost, which is relevant. It's a nice. If you go down the elemental approach, and the deck I was running, and this deck has more of the elemental approach because I actually run Oakenolds and I want to fuse Oakenolds. It's a great card because it's a great turn 1 play, which Oldhim struggles a bit with this. He doesn't have
No.
many great turn 1 plays. And it's a 3 cost for the hammer, and it's a nice card. That's it. That's pretty much it.
Pretty much it. So with to activate the hammer, it has to cost 3 or more. Okay, cool. My head just immediately my brain goes into blessing of deliverance mode when I see this. I'm like, oh yeah, this will work with blessing of deliverance. But no, Titan's Fist. This works really well with Titan's Fist. I guess the blot, but then that's ice, isn't it? The blot 2 is just one of those things you gotta.
I mean the card I used to have on this slot on the previous list was Hypothermia.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah, it's not a huge blow. I don't think it's a blow on Oldhim at all. I mean, Hypothermia, Insidious Chill might have been better either way.
Yeah. No,
it's not like a huge blow to Oldhim, but again, it was the same thing that Hypothermia was a decent turn 1 play against most decks. And now you have Insidious Chill, which is pretty much the same. I guess there is also one approach with Oldhim right now where you can almost go full on the Guardian stuff. And
Okay.
and just play almost no elemental cards or only play the good cards and ramp up your deck into have the more 3 blocks, have most of your cards cost 3 or more. That might be also an approach we might see on Oldhim. But because I do love high rolling and I do think Oakenfold is a great card, and I think Oakenfold it's a necessary evil in order to fight off against some decks. I do prefer running the more elemental oriented version because whenever you draw Oakenfold off the top and it's fused, your win percentage goes up insanely up. When it's not second cycle and you just off the top, had an Oakenfold in Arsenal and just get Ice, Earth, Blue, your win percentage suddenly got insanely up.
No, that's good.
That happens.
No, that's very cool. So your sideboard slots. I mean, is there anything else you want? Like a lot of this actually seems. I know there's going to be lots of different types and styles of Oldhim going forward, and obviously, I think this is a good representation of what an elemental Oldhim deck would look like, with replacing the Insidious Chills with Hypothermia, but still keeping the same standard stuff with Channel 8 Frigid, Winter's Grasp, Earthfloor Surge Blue, Winter's Bite Blue. For some reason I don't, and someone's going to tell me, Hamish, these cards are always in an Oldhim, but the Winter's Bite and Tome of Harvest, maybe I'm just completely out of the Oldhim. Are these cards that have always been in what you feel an elemental Oldhim?
I think I've never built an Oldhim list without Winter's Bite.
Right.
Not so much with Tome of Harvest. I think Tome of Harvest is a bit more, situational. Some people do not like it. I think it's really important for Oldhim, and definitely the way I've built my list, in order to whenever your opponent gives you a 3-card hand, I mean they only attack for 3, or they play a potion and arsenal, and they give you a bigger hand than what you would expect. You want to actually be able to do something with the resources, because on that turn it's really important to keep the pressure up. That's why Tome of Harvest is amazing, because if you get flooded on a blue hand and you have Tome of Harvest, you might actually be able to dig deeper in order to find something to force them to interact. That's why I think Tome of Harvest is pretty important. And the same goes probably with Polar Blast, Earthlore Surge, and Winter's Bite.
Okay.
Because you will never choose to play them. I mean, what I want to do with my turn. Oh, I want to play Polar Blast, so let's block with everything else and play Polar Blast. No, that's never the case in Winter's Bite. It just happens so that sometimes they might just go, okay, 5, you might have been hit by a Spinal Crash and will be just like, okay, block with 2 cards and attack for 4 and arsenal the last card. You're just like, okay, block with 1 card, and then right now you have 3 cards in hand and a card in arsenal. So you want your blue cards and your resources cards to force them to do something, to force them to remove cards from their hand.
No,
that's why Polar Blast and Winter's Bite and Earthlore Surge are so important.
No, that's I think that's a very good explanation of why you've got them in there. No, thank you for that. So I think we're gonna move down to the sideboard stuff. There's not too much in here, which we did. I remember we did a recording before this, and we were going to talk when you won with your ProQuest 2 events, and we had to adjust that slightly with these ban and restricted announcements. Where I was like, maybe this deck tech is probably not relevant anymore. I know why you've got in 1 Fate for scene and 2 Singbelows, but do you want to explain it again to everyone here why have you only got 1 Fate?
Okay, so the biggest reason is first of all, it's a bit harder for the opponent to count down the number of defense reactions you have, because running 3 copies of Sink Below, it's a bit easier for the opponent to keep track, while if you have blocked with 1 copy of Fate Foreseen and 1 copy of Sink Below, they might still try to figure out if Are you running the full 6 defense reactions? Are you only running a bit lower? It's not so easy for them to do that. And Sink Below is an arguably better card than Fate for Sin, but because Oldhim a lot of times has pretty consistent hands, these few times where you would not actually sink and you actually can opt one, it's a slight advantage. That actually a bit more relevant with Oldhim because it's a bit easier to pitch stack and it's a bit easier to see what card is on the top of your deck, so you might crown preemptively. So it's a bit easier to run Fate for Sin on Oldhim comparing to other decks. I do the same thing with all of the decks I create whenever I have 3 defense reactions, but let me just say that it's a bit better on Oldhim because actually opting on Oldhim is pretty good.
Yeah, no, Brill, thank you. And the debilitate include as well. Is that kind of a bit more of a flexible guardian attack? Is that one of those cards that may be depending on what the meta is doing, or is this something that you will always slot into guardian?
I think that's exactly the point. The reason I chose debilitate was because it's over the card slot of Chokeslam. I mean, the card I removed from the more traditional Oldhim lists in order to add debilitate was Chokeslam. And Chokeslam is way better into Rune Blades. And I didn't expect many Rune Blades in the latest ProQuest season. And actually, debilitate is relevant into Icelander as well. That's one of the things that, if we no longer see so much Icelander, probably debilitate might be the first card to get removed. And it's actually even relevant against Fi because of a single blue and tunic, you can actually attack for 8 and threatening the additional 2 if they do not get into a more defensive position, where that's how you win against Fi. If they need to block a lot of your attacks and you get more time to find more attacks and, the cycle.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think it's one of those things where, as well, when it gets closer to the game, of when you're on those lower health points and debilitate took 2 damage off an attack, however many turns ago, is now coming back to turn around and go, that's why you're on 2 more life. That's why you have that flexibility to take that extra 1 damage from that Phoenix Flame or whatever it is, because that last attack 4, 5, or 6 turns ago was 2 less damage, gave you room to push and make sure you can finish the game off. So yeah, no, that's I can exactly see why you want to slot that in. But I love the fact that you've got these. Guardian has these certain cards that they can go, okay, what's the meta doing? Debilitate isn't what I need, so I'm going to take Debilitate out and put Chokeslam in. And again, I think Crush the Weak is another one of those cards that is very, very similar to that same sort of process as well. It is a little bit, the card cost and everything, but again, it's that crush effect. What do I need this Guardian deck to do? What am I going to face in the meta? What's going to be the most popular thing? Here, I've got my core set of cards, like with in an elemental focus. I've got all of these. All of these tend to do what I need it to do. You got your Command and Conquers, Oakenard, Spinal Crush. You're gonna put them in because this is really, really good, right? They're just really, really good. But then, Debilitate, Crush the Weak, Chokeslam, and there are some others, and they will probably have their moment in the sun when the time needs it or allows it. But I love the fact that your deck, or most Guardian decks, have this sort of cool. That's probably why they're so strong, right? It's because they just got a card to deal with the situation. Here is a metacle, and I've got a card to deal with the metacle.
Yeah, I think also that's probably why. I mean, it's just so important for the Guardian class to know what he's going to face, because you only have so many sideboard slots, and Oldhim it's a bit even tougher than that because of the shields and stuff. So it's really important to actually, not miss a single slot in your main deck and sideboard in order to face off against the meta. I think also the last card I think I want to talk about a bit is Dear Sander, because I was a huge denier of this card.
What? This card's awesome. Look at it.
Not on all. I mean, the Tear Sunder into Winter's Whale, I think, was
Oh,
a pretty bad play. It was pretty weak. It's only
yeah.
good in the later stages of the game and stuff. The reason, though, I have 3 copies of Tear Sunder and I think this card is amazing, is because it plays amazingly with any 3-cost attacks you have in the deck.
Hmm.
Because it's essentially build your own Oakenhold.
Yeah.
I mean, you pitch a blue, you play Tear Sunder, you pitch a second blue, and you attack with any of the 3-cost attacks, and you suddenly have an 8 dominate, almost an Oakenhold. And I
Hmm.
mean, that's why I think Tear Sunder it's a great addition to this deck.
I can see why, because with the tunic counter, you can work around that with debilitate. Oakenhold is one of those cards that works really well with it. See that, not much else, but then sideboard down here, I can see that you've got Crush the Weak, which is a card that can tune in really well with Terra Sunder and Snow Under. I mean,
Snow Under is definitely one of the latest additions, and it's a necessary evil to make Insidious Chill a bit better.
yeah, I thought so.
The Frostbite is definitely more relevant now than it used to be because Winter's Whale is gone and because its Belittle is gone as well. So the single Frostbite might be pretty good, but the thing is that probably I really need to see what the meta will look like because the other card I was pretty much considering was the Biting Gale red.
Okay.
The Ice Fuse defense reaction.
Yes.
So it really depends on how the meta will shape if you prefer to have the Snow Under or if you prefer to have the defense reaction. My
Ooh.
instinct is that you will probably need to be a bit more aggressive, so not the defense reaction, but if a lot of more other aggressive decks show off, like a bit more aggressive Dorinthias or Warrior or Boltins or I don't
Oh, don't worry
know,
about that one.
or if there is something that you actually need to play off against Fi, and you actually need one more defensive tool now that they do not have the belittle, but actually, their numbers are up, and they have more 0/4/4s, so you would like to have a bit more defense reactions. That's probably the other card I would choose to add in my Oldhim list.
Oh, Biting Gale with Insidious Chill just feels like in that moment the turn is just over, isn't it? Because what is
Yeah.
Biting Gale? I know what happens when you fuse with that card again. Is it when?
It actually costs 2/4, and
Yeah,
if you use it, your opponent needs to discard the card or
or
pay 2. Pretty much an
it's
Insidious
Insidious
Chill
Chill.
activation. Yeah,
So
it's
it's
Insidious Chill.
Jesus Christ. So it's a defense reaction version of it's almost doing kind of, but not really, but kind of the what Icelander does with God, what's the card called? Ice Vein.
Ice Veins. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Echoing Ice Veins.
that's
Yeah.
it. It feels very similar where it goes, okay, well, I've got to pay up and I'm not doing any damage, but I'm blocking up, but I've fused. So, Insidious Chill trigger and then this trigger. And then your whole turn is dismantled like what an Icelander would do. Like, and then you go, oh, okay, well, I guess, guess that's
I'm
that.
not really. The thing is with Insidious Chill that it's pretty weird. It's pretty bad against most of the tall decks.
Oh, of
Be-
course.
it-
Yeah, because they just don't
It's
care. That's the
it's
same
pretty
problem with
bad.
Icelander, right?
So I haven't included the card yet because again we don't know how the meta will look like. But if the meta becomes way more aggressive because Icelander with hypothermia is no longer there to put a hard stop to the more wider and more aggressive decks, it might be a great addition to hard stop them. Because the amazing thing with Oldhim and that defense reaction is that it actually costs 2, and that's a good thing for Oldhim because you can actually use with the remaining one the Crown of Seeds, and effectively, you pitch a blue, you play the card you fuse, and you essentially after play the defense reaction and force them to pay 2, and you blocked 4 plus 1 the Crown of Seeds for 5, you still have a 3-card hand.
Yeah, it's almost like an immovable in a way. When sometimes, and I know it's not probably, but if you've got the shield rampart or like you said, the crown of seeds, an immovable is pitch 3 for block 5. So with the Crown of Seeds and the Rampart, there you go. I've managed to dismantle your hand and block 5.
Yeah.
Has that same sort of level of that. That's really cool. It's a really cool thought process. It's that I love the fact that Oldhim can really, really just make having floating resources when you have to pitch to block up and do stuff. He pushes that so much better than any other hero in the game, of making use of additional resources to make things work. I suppose Icelander is also in that same boat as well. But yeah, just being able to have that is really cool. I'd love to see Biting Gale. Although I say that, I think maybe Biting Gale would just trigger me so hard if I saw that being played on me. So, but you're trying out the more aggressive approach with Snow Under.
Because it's again, we don't know how the meta will look like, and it's almost better to be a bit more aggressive when you don't know what you're going to face up against. And Snow Under on this deck works pretty great because again, it's a 3 cost, it's good for Tira Sunder, it triggers Insidious Chill, and the Frostbite might start becoming again a bit more relevant because people might, sleep a bit. Icelander is gone, is not gone, but
No,
it's
I
it's
don't
a lot
think.
of
I don't think.
hypothermia. Yeah, it's not gone, but people might start, start cutting blues, might start get a bit more greedy with their pitch value. So
They shouldn't.
that's why I think Snow Under is a great addition.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And I can see that you got your additional copy of Blizzard, Staunch Responses. I can see why they're in there. Your red Glacial Footsteps, is that another? It's just another big tool card. It has an Ice Fusion, which is just pairing up with Insidious Chill very well. I can see that.
This list used to run actually 6 10 power attacks rather than 3.
No.
But the reason was probably to face off against Icelander. If Icelander becomes a bit weaker and we don't see her as much, that's why I actually cut them to 3. Because I think it will probably be enough. You still need some big attacks to play off against Das and against other Guardians. But you almost, except from probably Icelander and Das, I don't think you ever wanted more than 3 copies of these big attacks in your list.
So I'm looking at this really cool card, Exposed to the Elements. So why have you got the 1 copy of this? And I do love it, by the way. Is it just...
I used to run 2 copies of Exposed to the Elements, but again, because of the changes, it's actually a pretty good card with... it's a good card versus Icelander. It was one of the few ways you actually had to break the circle of Icelander getting the full value every turn from their hand.
Yeah.
And it was pretty important to have that card. Now, if Icelander becomes a bit weaker, you might not need the full... then you might not need the second copy as much. Also, I do not like having many cards in my deck that do not block at all. So because I added the 3rd copy of Blizzard on the sideboard, I don't think I ever could run like 5 cards that do not block at all.
No, that's fair.
I don't know if it's the Oldhim feeling, but having 5 cards in my deck that cannot block, I mean, it feels... No.
No, I know what you mean, but I totally agree. The exposing elements. If you would basically put Icelander in a position where you go, yeah, I know you're going to Arsenal, but exposed to the elements. And if you just happen to have an Insidious Chill down, I know stars align, pie in the sky, yada yada yada, right? But these little things can matter. Let's say we don't even have Insidious Chill. If you do have Insidious Chill, those boots are dead, right? There's nothing they can do about it. Those boots are a goner. But if they don't, you are basically going, your boots are dead. Give me that card. And they go, right, I'll have to give you that card. No card in Arsenal. Yeah, I didn't kill your boots, but you don't have a card in Arsenal. Back to me. I'm going to slam down. And it just gives you that push, doesn't it? Like you said, breaks the cycle.
And also, I think probably one of the stronger reasons to choose Elemental Oldhim over the more traditional generic attacks, you lose a lot in blocking with playing Elemental Oldhim, but the fact that you can run Exposed to the Elements it's pretty relevant as well for the mirror.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's not so much that you're going to destroy Crown of Seeds, because Oldhim it's pretty traditional to always have a card in arsenal, and even if they lose the card in arsenal in order to pay, it's not a huge deal. But if they have the Rampart approach and you actually give a -1 counter to Rampart with the Earth Fusion,
It's dead, isn't it? It's dead.
yeah, you suddenly got insanely ahead. I mean, if one Oldhim can pitch a blue and prevent two, and the other Oldhim can pitch a blue and only prevent one, it's one single point of damage every single turn almost.
Oh, it's massive, and then it also just turns all of their pitch into like the pitch to use crown, and then that's kind of it. It feels, yeah, that doesn't feel good at all. It feels pretty bad, I can imagine. So, and then your equipment seems pretty much largely the same. I mean, they're
Pretty traditional. I mean, again, it depends on how much Guardian we're going to see, because if the meta changes drastically and we might see some more grindy decks pop off and some more defensive Oldhims, and I don't know how the meta will shape up, to be completely honest. You might see some changes and might actually need to play the hammer, the big hammer, the anvil,
the sledge,
the sleds, right? So, but I think with this kit, most of the time I'm fine. The only thing I feel really proud about was actually running Stalagmite into Icelander.
Yeah.
And I think that actually gave me a lot of percentage vintage points into the Icelander decks, even though it might feel weird, because the 3 life that it gave you, if it was the attack Icelander deck, it's actually pretty relevant. The Frostbite might not be so relevant because most of the time they just attack with one big attack and that's it. But the 3 points of life into Icelander, into that super tight, grindy matchup, it's actually pretty relevant.
Yeah, plus as well, if it's an amazing card to use against when they decide they're going to scar for scar, yeah, you know, and it's just like, you know, this Frostbite now feels very, 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 very annoying all of a sudden. So yeah, no, I agree, especially the attack style Icelanders. Now, we'll end on this point. Obviously you've been well, I say you. Oldham's been nerfed. Vi's been for pretty much anyone that wants to rely on Belittle to push through, but Vi currently with their Belittle deck has been massively nerfed. I think the biggest thing that's kind of opened the doors from what I'm seeing is hypothermia being banned and opening up Dash. I think Dash is one that's came out. I always say this every meta, Dash. I think Dash just goes, oh my god, Dash is going to be it this time, and then everyone then Dash goes kicking off, and then eventually just tapers down again. But seriously, I think hypothermia has actually made people go and look at Dash again. So is that a problem for Oldhim?
It's definitely one of the weaker matchups, and actually at the start of the ProQuest season, where I didn't feel that Oldhim will be this good, and I would feel that Dash was definitely better. It was actually one of the few reasons to actually choose Bravo over Oldhim, because he has a clearly, for me as well, better matchup into Dash. And the Oldhim Dash matchup is probably one of the weakest.
Yeah, no.
You do not have many ways to dominate. You do not have many ways to dominate. You do not have many. Endless Winter actually needs to carry the game at some stages.
Yeah.
During the later stages of the game, Endless Winter really needs to gain its value there. And probably if Dash becomes a meta, you might need to move back to Mucho Grande Red on Sideboard in order to face her.
Right.
Or cards along these lines.
Okay, but you've got options.
You definitely got options. That's a great thing with Guardians all of the time. And I mean, even though it might sound silly, even the one copy of Imperial Warhorn and one copy of Remembrance is actually a game plan. against Das.
I like it. Everyone, now that Imperial Warhorn's out, everyone's playing the Rhinar plan of Arg Smash. Put as many copies as you can in, put that in, and then remembrance those copies back in, and then you'll see a world where the Dash players will go, I'm putting remembrance copies in to put my items back in again. And we're back to 2020 New Zealand nationals, where Rohan versus Kieran, who's from Session Blood, and Rohan's now an LS Dev. They're in the top 8. And was it Kieran? No, it was Carol from Session Blood. And Carol, they played an hour and a half long top 8 game of Dash versus Rhinar, where they were remembrancing the Arg Smashes, and it was a race of remembrancing the flipping items back in. It was ridiculous. And James White goes up to him and goes, dudes, can you hurry this up? So I can see the world now where Oldhims are going, we've got our own Arg Smash. It's called Warhorn. Oh, God, the days. Anyway, I think unless there's anything else that you want to add to this, I would say, just to leave it. I haven't got any more questions to ask. If you do have any questions, leave your comments down below. Like and subscribe and all that stuff. And Yorgos will have a look at this and we'll go through and reply to this as and when. But is there any sort of closing notes you want to give on this, or do you feel like you've explained it fairly well?
Well, I think the only thing I would say is that Oldhim is definitely a deck that will stay here. I don't think the banning was definitely a big nerf, but I don't think it was big enough to move him away from being one of the stronger decks that exist right now, in my opinion. He might not perform so well for a bit until, the chaos stabilizes a bit and we see the more new decks. We might start seeing Lexi, or, unless the meta stabilizes a bit, we might not see as much Oldhim, because he really needs to know what he wants to face again in order to shape his deck. But after that happens, I think we will still see the old grandpa.
Yeah,
until he's living legend.
I think it's very fascinating. I think we've by saying this, we've figured it out. He early game notes are good, but like the endless winter he is, the longer we see this meta, the bigger and stronger we're getting. So maybe that's what Uprising did. Dynasty didn't really do a huge change, so we're in this meta longer. And they've not changed that much. It's still Fire, it's still Icelander. So Oldhim is just getting better because you just solely target them. And that's why he's probably got as much wins as he got, because Dynasty didn't make Icelander and Fire move off the perch from Worlds, effectively. So when Outsiders comes out, if we're in a world where Outsiders, the meta becomes still the same, man, Oldhim's just like, okay, cool, I know what I need to do, But if it's vastly, Wild West, he's like, oh no, fuck this. I'll wait. Bide my time.
I'll wait in my quiet, chilly corner. Yeah. I'll wait.
And then I'll soon see, and then I'll creep out with all my cards. Anyway, Yorgos, thank you so much for jumping on again. No one knows this, but this is the 3rd time we've done this, but this is the 2nd time officially. I can't wait to have you on again to hopefully maybe that. Yeah, I'd love it if we can talk about another hero, but if it's more Oldhim, man, I can't wait.
Well, I will try. I will try to do something with a different hero, but I mean,
check him out. He's streaming. I'll put a link down below in the description. Yorgos tests out lots of different decks, lots of different theories on lots of different heroes. And most of the time I actually see you not playing Oldhim, and you're trying to work out every other hero. And you're a fantastic streamer. So go, if you're free and you want to check out what Yorgos is doing, link below, go follow, all that sort of good stuff on Twitch. I can't remember. Subscribe, isn't it?
Yeah, it's subscribe, yeah.
Unless you're on Prime. Anyway, thanks so much, everyone. I'll see you later.